Okay, well, hello everyone. Welcome to Rambling About Art, a name I decided will be the name of this series a couple minutes ago, actually. It was super last minute. But, anyways, what I think this will be is just conversations about art, doodling some stuff, walking you through a little bit of the illustrations I post online and the illustrations a lot of people see me work on but don't get the behind the scenes look at. And at the same time as that, I'll be rambling about some stuff. You know, will I talk about inking in line work? Will I talk about walk a flock of flame? I don't know. I'm going loose with it, and so should you. Don't worry about it. But anyways, so what I'm working on today is, in the last video we did a little bit of inking of a kaijun piece, so a big monster basically, and we inked that last time. Today I'm going to be coloring it, talking a little bit about coloring, taking it super slow, and whatever comes out of it, you know? If you like it, cool. So the first step of my process, because a lot of people ask me this actually, is, well, of how do I ink, right? So I got my ink layer here. The first thing that I do is I make a copy of my ink layer, and then in that copy I go up to image adjustments, hue and saturation, and then I make the line work super light. That's step one. I do this because the way I do it is I like to color block under my ink layer, so I'm not actually coloring in the same layer that my inks are in. And if you do this while this layer is all black, sometimes you get pixelation when you try to change colors. So the way that I do it is I make this layer super light so that none of my ink is touched and I don't get that pixelation around the edges when I want to change things. So the next step that I do is, again, in my light ink layer, which is actually what I'm going to call it. Usually I don't label things, but for the sake of a video and trying to seem not messy, we'll do that. The next step is to just throw colors in. So I know because this guy was based on an ostrich, I wanted it to be brown and beige and a couple other colors to make it pop. So really, step one is just throwing in colors. I use a good one here. Yeah. And I think this step is really cool because when you're just throwing in colors, seeing what works without having it really influence any other part of the drawing, then you get a pretty good idea of how the colors will work together, which I think helps. You know, you don't really want to be adjusting all of your base colors in the middle of your coloring. So if you just give yourself the time to work through, like, what do these really big blocks of color look like? How does the drawing fit in and of itself right off the bat? Then you end up saving yourself a lot of work later on. I think I want these to be the same color. Yeah, I don't really know what color I want those hands to be. I feel like they should be a little bit different just for contrast sake. But let's make this head the same color as the arms and legs. And let's go with a weird color for those little fur balls. Let's go green. We'll go green for now. Yeah, I think that's cool. It's feeling very Pokemon-y, which is dope. That's kind of what I was going for. And I feel like, you know, I personally don't think I have a super firm grasp on color in drawing. Like, I know a little bit about color theory, but not a super big amount. But knowing a lot about color theory and putting color together in your drawing can really sometimes make or break a drawing, or at the very least, it can really improve a drawing. You know, if you know how to piece colors together, then you know how to invoke emotion, you know how to convey thoughts and feelings without adding things like words or going too heavy on the illustration. But I do know for this one, I want it to feel very light and, again, Pokemon-esque. Just because that's dope. Taking its time. Another reason why it's good to do this inking and coloring into different layers, you can see I just made a mistake, is sometimes if you're blocking in and you hit this ink layer, it'll turn all of it into that color. And so I can just turn it back, and I've got my grays back. You know? Cool. So this is feeling good, feeling pretty fun, but also these browns are not feeling like they pop enough. They feel a little bit too washed out in comparison to the rest of it, so I'm gonna beef them up a little bit. Little bit of beefed up. Yeah, so in the deciding that this is going to be a weird podcast thing, I thought a lot about what do I talk about? You know, what do people care about? Do people care about the same things that I do? And some of the things I came up with were like coloring, inking, shading, talking through process work, talking about, I don't know, life and art and drawing and being a freelancer, giving tips on that kind of stuff. So if that's what you're interested in, I think this will be a cool project for you to listen in on. Or if you want to hear more stuff, I would say just leave a comment and I can talk about it. We can chat. This video is going to be pretty unstructured as it's the first one, and I don't really have a specific topic in mind. It'll just be rambling about art, which is cool too, you know? Doing the thing, hanging out, taking the first step and filming a video, even though you feel a little bit insecure about video, which is fine. Yeah, so this is coming out pretty cool. I think standard color-wise, it's feeling good. And when I start adding in some shading, it'll feel a little bit better. But just for color blocking, this is feeling pretty good. Even though I'm pretty indecisive with color too, so I'll probably change it up a little bit later on. Filling the sword here. Yeah, that's cool. As you can see, most of my coloring technique, as I said before, is not based on color theory. It's more based on what looks cool. So if it looks cool, I'll probably throw it in there. Which is, maybe that's not the best way to color, but doesn't matter. I'm gonna go a little bit lighter on that blue. That was darker. That was not lighter at all. So I'm hoping these videos will take up a majority of what my channel is full of, you know, just starting out the channel, trying to figure out my lane. What do I do here? You know, what's my place in the YouTube video market? I've been getting a lot of feedback from fans and supporters on Instagram, which is cool because I consider a lot of those folks like really cool online friends. And, you know, so when they give feedback, I really take it to heart. And a lot of folks have said that they'd like to see me draw, and then they'd like to hear a little bit about what I do, get behind the process, and get some tips and tricks. So again, that's mainly what this channel is going to be focused on, which I think is cool. You know, I think I also want to fill it with like some animations. I want to get a little bit more into animations in the coming weeks, just so that I can put out some new cool stuff for everyone, and then also experiment with animation, you know? So there'll definitely be some of that going on. I'm not really sure what else though, you know? like art videos, podcasts, tutorials, animations. Seems like a lot. I'll also be making videos on my brand's account over at Loner Radio, and be doing some animations on that end. So if you're interested in getting put on to local artists, new artists around the world, some weird, cool animations, stories, and stuff like that, I would definitely say follow Loner Skateboarding. It's at Loner Media on YouTube, but that's like linked to my page, so you can check that out, because that's going to be a lot of what's going on over there. What am I going to make the hilt? Hilts of swords are hard. Like, harder than they should be, I think. Because you don't want it to clash with the whole sword, or the rest of the sword, but you do also want it to fit in with everything else. So I think I'm going to go with the same gray I made the hilt, and then just make it like a metal hilted sword. And this one's not super detailed, so it, fits. And then for the accenting in the secondary color, I'll probably go with like a gold. Oh, that's yellow, but yeah, I think it's cool. Fill that in there. Throw it in. Gotta get real deep, get real close for those colors. And then for stuff like this, I usually don't think it's worth it to get in there with the fill tool. So I will just grab a brush and then fill areas like this in right under that layer, so that I can merge the layers together and get the same effect as me filling it in. And this works really well for drawings with like a lot of those small details in them. Boom. Yeah, so this is feeling super good. I think I might move on to shading, or well, I don't know. I think I'm gonna change this color right here. Yeah, I think that's cool. I think I'm gonna leave that. Sweet. Oh, and then I'm going to select this red here. And then I know I want that like saliva drip to not be red. And the prompt for this drawing was tank. So I think that's where this like really cool big ostrich thing, plays its strong suit. Making some big chunky monster that runs around cities, taking hits, taking names, doing whatever. That's cool. Bam. Yeah, and I think I might fix that later. But for now, that's feeling really good. I'm going to go back and make sure I didn't miss any of these white areas, because I do that a lot. I end up near the end of the drawing missing, or realizing that I missed a huge like little white area and having to go back. So I'm going to do that. I'm also going to go here to my ink layer and then add little details here. So add a little band-aid. And I think one's enough, because tanks don't get hurt like that. Yeah. Cool. So I'm gonna go in that layer, just so I can get my color in there. Grab that, go down here. Sweet, and I think that works pretty well. Yeah, so that's the base drawing. This is how even like super complex drawings you can do this strategy with, you can do this technique with. You get your inks down, you get your base colors in, and then after that you go in and do your shading. And I have kind of a particular way of shading drawings that I'm going to show you. I actually filmed another video with the monster I drew for day 1 or day 2, that's a little bit more in depth, but not as in depth as I'd like it to be. So I think I'll dedicate a whole video to that someday. But for now, I'm just going to show you how I do that here. So first and foremost, I use something called the Select Pixel tool. So if you go to here and on this little square on Photoshop, you can right click and hit Select Pixels, and that's just going to hit any pixel that's populated in that layer. And so what I do from there is you make a new layer, you put that above all these layers, and usually off top I set that to about 40% opacity. Yep. And then for my pen tool, I get the solid black. And basically what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to start setting in my heavy darks. And so I'm going to set in my heavy darks, and I'm going to do two-tone shading today for this drawing. So there's actually going to be 2 layers of shading that go into this one. So with this first layer, I get my black pen tool, and then I just draw right in there. And my goal of this being to just fill in all of the heavy dark areas of the drawing. So like the darkest parts of the drawing are the ones that get filled in like this. And it's recommended you keep this one pretty light, because from my experience, this layer and this level of shading is what's going to determine the overall tone of your drawing. So like if you make them super dark, and I will after I finish this base shading in, but if you make this super dark, super opaque, then it's going to make your drawing seem darker, seem a little darker toned. So if you want that, it's great for it. For this one, I don't want it super dark, so I'm going to try and use this kind of sparingly. If sparingly means what I think it means, which is not a lot of it. And then I think to do this well, if you understand shading and direction and light and how things interact with one another, this will not be that hard. So for this drawing, as you can see, I've got my light source coming in from up here. Nope. Yeah, here I'm gonna do this. I've got my light source coming in from up here and then shooting down at it. So that's why like areas like this are dark. I'll make this palm a little bit darker. I'll probably go in here and make this super dark. And then the farther away from that light source, the more of this you want to add in just to make it more believable. Yeah, that's cool. And as you can see, I've got a little bit of this dark, like solid black in here. And, you know, if you don't have that, you can just do this the same way. But if you do add that into your drawing, it's a good idea to start this process of base shading in right around those areas. Because that's the same process you're going to do, and that I do, when I do my secondary shading layer. Add some of that in here. And because of my recording software, the computer's lagging a little bit, but it's not too bad. Not too bad. Something else I think I'll be adding to this channel is like tutorial videos. So, you know, like Photoshop tips and tricks, there are a lot of little nuances to Photoshop that can really help a digital artist that I had to learn kind of by brute forcing it for a long time. And I wish that there was a super big video full of those little things that would help me. So I think that's what I'm going to do with this channel as well. Kind of making it into the resource that I wish I had when I was learning, because I think that'll help a lot of people. And again, I know I've said this before, but if you have some ideas about things you'd like to see or things you think would help you in your drawing, let me know. I would love to add it. I think it'd be cool and fun. So right here, I'm just getting these really big blocks, sectioning them off, so that I can go in with my fill tool later and add them in. And what's good about using this black pen strategy with a lowered opacity at the layer is that whenever you draw over something, you're not just drawing, you know, like black or gray or something. When you lower the opacity on that black, it's going to change itself a little bit to adjust to the color that's under it. So you get a little bit more of a believable shading, if that makes sense. Like the shading feels a little bit more believable, a little bit more realistic, even if you're working on something super cartoony like this. I'm also going to go up here and lower my smoothing. Smoothing is basically what helps keep your lines straight, which is very important on like digital tablets like this, but it also eats up a little bit of your memory that your computer's using, and it makes the lines stutter a little bit or just lag behind a little bit. So if you're covering like larger areas like this, you can usually turn the smoothing down super low. I'll go even lower. So you lose a little bit of the preciseness of the drawing, but you can cover areas faster, like this. Majority of the dark layer here, and now all that's left is for me to add in that secondary layer and then a little bit of color gradient in. Yeah, I told you I'd miss a spot, but yeah, so to see the difference, and it adds a little bit of a 3D effect. I think I also missed a spot down here, but it adds in a 3D effect to the drawing, and that's just the first layer that does that. Once you add in 2-layer lighting, I'm forgetting what it's called, but once you add in that second layer of lighting, it's really going to start feeling 3D no matter what style of drawing you're doing. So I'll show you that right after I finish this little bit. Yeah, that's feeling good. So if I take it off, you know, feels super flat, and then you get these dark areas that just, again, help add in that 3D effect. Feeling a little bit there. And I try not to worry about it too much. If the shading's a little messy, usually that doesn't come through in the final bit. But so, in the same way that I made this layer just for my first level of shading, I'm going to do a second layer right above it, and my general rule of thumb is to do this layer's opacity at 50% of whatever this layer is. So if my first layer is 40%, I go in this one, I go say 20%, right? And then the point of this layer right here is to just build off of the layer underneath it. So if I have some dark areas here, I just want to add in a much heavier stroke around this stuff. Yeah, so go right around those areas, and then you can be a little bit more generous with this too, because as opposed to the first layer, this one doesn't dictate much of what the tone of the drawing is. So that's that on that section, and adding in the secondary color. As you can see, I was super loose with it. didn't take it too seriously. And now what I'm going to do is, again, using the select pixel method, right click select pixels on the first layer of shading, then going up to your second and deleting all that overlap. So what you end up with is something super smooth that feels really good. And then you just want to adjust the opacity of the layers based on that. You know, what feels right for the drawing? Is it too much? Is it too little? I think that feels a little too light. Yeah, so that's the basic coloring technique that I use for most drawings. I think I'm going to end this video here just because it's getting pretty long. And if I make another one, it'll be about how to use gradients to just... Actually, I'll add that now. I'm going to do that now because it's kind of quick. So I have my gradient tool. If you don't know where that is, I just right-clicked on my paint bucket tool and I hit gradient. And then so you get these different kind of gradients. Personally, I like to go here and then you pick two colors that are kind of opposite each other, one brighter and cooler, one brighter, hotter, and one cooler and a little softer. Red, blue tend to work pretty well. And then you want to make another layer right above your ink layers. Right click your bottom drawing, select pixels again, get that shape, and then back on the top layer here. The radial tool is pretty good for this. You just set your gradient to expand out. And give it a second. And then so what you're going to end up with is this right here, where your drawing is completely covered in by a gradient. And I'm actually going to use the rainbow gradient here for this. So I'll give it another second to load up. Again, it's being a little slow because of my recording software. But, you know, give it a second. And then you're going to get this rainbow gradient right over your drawing in a separate layer. And then you just want to go right over here to where it says normal. And then two good ones are multiply or one of these. Usually overlay works pretty good. So you grab that and then it just changes the colors a bit on your drawing. Then you want to go to opacity and then just lower the opacity a little bit. And what that does is it just adds a little bit of dimension to the drawing in ways that usually normal coloring can't. So you can see over here, you know, flat drawing looks really good. Could be a little bit more saturated, but you go over here, add in your gradient, play with one of the effects over here, see what looks good. Yeah. So usually you can just pick through one of these, scroll through them, see which one looks best, and then adjust the opacity based on that. Yeah, so I would probably do something like that. And then from there, depending on how that looks with the drawing, sometimes I like to go to this layer, adjust my saturation a little bit. Maybe the colors need a bit of beefing up. Maybe you've got to darken them up a little bit so it fits. And that is how I do the basic coloring of a drawing. And again, the video before this will probably have the inking steps. So if you haven't seen that one and you want to go back to see how I ink this one, how I get my line work looking like this, I'd say go back to this, the one before this one. And yeah, you know, I think this video came out pretty good. My second video going up on YouTube, so still kind of new on it. If you have any feedback, leave that below. Or, you know, hit me on Instagram at EatMoreSpiders and we'll make something cool happen. Good night. How do I turn this off?